The giant alien ship hung in the sky above Seoul like a dark cloud that would never move. General Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the blue and green planet below. His yellow eyes glowed with satisfaction. Another world was about to surrender. Another victory for the Galactic Coalition. The bridge was massive, filled with control panels that beeped and flashed. Alien officers moved between the stations, their scaled hands working on computers that could destroy entire cities. Smelled of metal and ozone. Everything was built for creatures much larger than humans. General Vextar was 7 feet tall, with dark green scales covering his body. His claws tapped against the metal railing as he watched Earth through the main viewing screen. He had conquered 47 worlds in his long career. This would be number 48. "General," said Commander Zelk, his second in command, "the human delegation has arrived." Vextar turned his massive head. His mouth opened slightly, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Good, let them come and surrender properly, and we can get this over with." The doors to the bridge slid open with a soft hiss. 3 figures walked in, but they were much smaller than the aliens expected. The 2 guards were human soldiers in blue uniforms. Between them walked a young Korean woman who looked very small. On the huge bridge, her name was Mira Kim. She was 25 years old, with long black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore a white dress that looked clean but not expensive. Her hands shook slightly, but she walked with her head up. Her dark eyes looked around the bridge, taking in all the alien technology. The alien officers stared at her. Some of them whispered to each other in their clicking language. They had expected important government officials or military leaders. Instead, Earth had sent them a girl who looked like she should be working in an office somewhere. "This is their diplomat, Commander," Zelk asked in disbelief. General Vextar studied Mira carefully. She was nervous. That was obvious. But there was something else in her eyes, something that looked like hope, which was strange. Most humans at this point were full of fear. "You may speak," the general said in heavily accented English. His voice was deep and rough, like grinding rocks. Myra stepped forward. She had practiced this moment many times, but standing here surrounded by creatures that could kill her with one swipe of their claws made her heart beat fast. Began, her voice quiet but steady. "I am Myra Kim. I represent the people of Earth." The general laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You, child, represents an entire planet." "I am not here to surrender," Myra said, ignoring the laughter from the alien officers around the bridge. "I am here to tell you about my brother." This was not what Vextar had expected. He leaned forward in his command chair, interested despite himself. "Your brother?" Mira nodded. "His name is Taeho Kim. 3 years ago, he was a student at Seoul National University. He studied engineering and loved to build things. He was smart and kind, and he always helped me with my homework." The aliens looked at each other with confusion. Commander Zelk spoke up. "General, what does this have to do with their surrender?" But Vextar held up one clawed hand for silence. Something about the way the human girl spoke made him want to hear more. There was a sadness in her voice, but also something else, something like pride. 3 years ago, Mira continued, men in black suits came to our house. They said the government needed Taeho for something important, something that would help protect Korea. My parents tried to say no, but the men said it was not a choice." She paused and took a deep breath. The bridge was completely quiet now, except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. "They took him to a place they called Project Baiko. They would not tell us where it was or what they were doing to him. For 6 months, we heard nothing. My mother cried every night. My father stopped eating properly." General Vextar found himself listening carefully. The girl's story was sad, but he had heard many sad stories from conquered worlds. This did not seem like something that would change the outcome of an invasion. Then one day, Taeho came home for a visit, Mira said, and now her voice changed. There was something new in it, something that made the alien officers lean forward to listen better. But he was different. He looked the same on the outside, but his eyes were different. They seemed to see things that were not there. He could do things that should not be possible. "What kind of things?" Vextar asked. though he was sure this was just human imagination. Myra looked directly at the general. He could move things. Without touching them, he could run faster than cars. He could make light come from his hands, and he said he was not the only one. The bridge erupted in clicks and hisses as the alien officers talked among themselves. Commander Zelk stepped forward. "General, this is obviously fantasy. Humans trying to make themselves sound more dangerous than they are." But Mira was not finished. Taiho told me about the others in the program. My childhood friend Hannah, who could walk through walls like they were made of air. Yuan, who could be in two places at the same time. Yuan, who could make space bend. Around him, General Vextar's yellow eyes narrowed. Even if this were true, which it is not, what does it matter? We have weapons that can destroy your entire planet. That is what I thought too, Mira said quietly. Until the last time I saw my brother. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering. When she opened them again, there were tears there, but her voice stayed strong. There was an earthquake in Seoul. A big building was falling down, and people were trapped underneath. The emergency crews said it would take hours to get them out, but Taiho was there. The aliens listened despite themselves. He put his hands against the falling building, and it just stopped. Tons of concrete and steel hanging in the air like it weighed nothing. Then he moved so fast he looked like a blur, pulling people out of the rubble. When he was done, he let the building finish falling. "Impossible," Commander Zelk hissed. "The government covered it up," Mira continued. "They said it was a new type of construction crane. But I was there. Da-da-da-da-da. I saw what my brother had become." General Vextar stood up from his command chair. He walked slowly toward Mira, his claws clicking on the metal floor. When he reached her, he leaned down so his face was close to hers. "Little human," he said, his voice soft but dangerous. "Do you expect me to be afraid of bedtime stories about your missing brother?" Mira looked up into his yellow eyes without flinching. "I expect you to listen, because Taiho and the others are still out there. They're waiting. And if you attack Earth, you will meet the monsters we have made." General Vextar threw back his head and laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge, and soon all the alien officers were laughing too. The idea that this primitive world could create anything that would threaten the Galactic Coalition was ridiculous. "Monsters," he said, still chuckling. "Your species makes excellent fiction writers. I will give you that." But Mira did not look defeated. Instead, she smiled sadly and said something that made the general's laughter die in his throat. "You should be more careful about what you call impossible, General. My brother taught me that the universe is much stranger than most people think." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small metal device. Before any of the aliens could react, she pressed a button on it. "I just sent a signal to Earth," she said calmly. "I told them that peaceful contact has failed." Snarled and grabbed Mira by the shoulders. "What have you done?" Mira looked up at him with eyes that no longer held fear. Instead, they held something that made the general's blood run cold. "I told them to wake up my brother." General Vextar shook Myra hard, his claws digging into her shoulders. "What signal? What did you tell them?" "Oh." Myra winced from the pain but did not cry out. "I told them you would not listen to reason. I told them to prepare for war." The general threw her away from him. She stumbled, but did not fall. Around the bridge, alien officers were checking their communication systems and sensors. Red lights began flashing on several control panels. Sir called out Lieutenant Kex from the sensor station. "I am detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface." "What kind of energy?" Commander Zelk demanded. "Unknown, sir. The patterns do not match any known technology in our database." General Vextar glared at Mira. "Tell me more about this brother of yours. What exactly did they do to him?" Mira rubbed her shoulders where his claws had grabbed her. The pain was sharp, but she ignored it. Project Biko was not just about making better soldiers. They were trying to change what it means to be human. She walked to the large viewing screen that showed Earth below. The planet looked peaceful. From this distance, with white clouds swirling over blue oceans, but Myra knew that appearance was lying. "Taiho told me about the experiments," she continued. "They did not just train their bodies or give them better weapons. They found a way to expand human consciousness itself. Consciousness expansion, Commander Zelk repeated mockingly. More fantasy stories. But Mira kept talking, her voice growing. Stronger, they learned how to make the human mind connect directly with the quantum field that holds reality together. Taiho said it was like learning to see the code that runs the universe. Several alien officers exchanged worried glances. Quantum field manipulation was theoretical technology that even the most advanced species in the coalition had not mastered. They started with 12 people, Mira said. My brother Taiho, my childhood friend Hannah, and 10 others, including Jiwon and Kyung. For 2 years, they trained them to push beyond normal human limits. General Vextar crossed his arms. Even if such a thing were possible, 12 enhanced humans could not threaten an entire invasion fleet. Mira turned away from the viewing screen to face him. 12 was just the first group, General. The successful test group. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of machinery and the soft beeping of sensors. How many groups? Vextar asked, and for the first time, his voice held a note of uncertainty. I do not know, Mira admitted. Taiho never told me the exact numbers, but he said the program had expanded to facilities in other countries. America, Russia, China, Japan, all working together on the same project. Lieutenant Kex looked up from his sensor station, his face pale with worry. General, the energy readings are increasing. They are coming from multiple locations around the globe. Show me, Vextar ordered. The main viewing screen changed from a simple view of Earth to a tactical display. Dozens of red dots appeared. On the planet's surface, scattered across every continent, each pulsed with energy signatures that made the ship's computers struggle to analyze them. That is impossible, Commander Zelk breathed. Those energy levels would require massive power plants. Not power plants, Mira said quietly. People. Enhanced people who have learned to tap into forces you do not understand. General Vextar studied the display with growing unease. In his long military career, he had learned to trust his instincts. And right now, those instincts were telling him that something was very wrong. Tell me about the last time you saw your brother, he commanded. Mira's eyes grew distant as she remembered. It was 6 months ago. He came home for what he said might be the last time. He looked tired, like he had not slept in weeks. But there was also something else in his eyes, something like sadness. She paused, then continued. He told me that the project was almost complete, that soon they would not be able to live normal lives anymore. The changes they had undergone were too extreme. What changes? Vextar asked. He showed me some of them, Mira said. Oh. Small things at first. He made a cup of tea float across the room without touching it. He moved from one side of the kitchen to the other, so fast that my eyes could not follow him. He made patterns of light dance in the air with just his thoughts. The alien officers listened, despite their skepticism. There was something in the human girl's voice that made her story sound real. But then he showed me something bigger, Mira continued. We went outside into our garden. There was an old tree there that had been dead for years. My father kept, meaning to cut it down, but never got around to it. She looked directly at General Vextar. Taiho put his hand on the tree trunk and closed his eyes. I could feel energy moving around him, like the air itself was alive. And then the tree began to change. Change how? Commander Zelk asked despite himself. It came back to life. Dead wood became strong again. Brown leaves turned green. Unless. Then a minute, a tree that had been dead for years was healthy and growing again. The bridge was completely quiet now. Even the most skeptical officers were listening carefully. I asked him how it was possible, Myra said. He told me that death and life were just different states of organized matter. If you understood the underlying patterns well enough, you could change one into the other. General Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. He had conquered many worlds and faced many weapons, but this was something entirely different. This was not technology. This was evolution. The tree was just practice, Myra continued. Taiho said they were learning to do much more complicated things, to change not just matter, but space and time itself. Sir Lieutenant Kex called out. Urgently, the energy readings are spiking across the entire planet. Whatever they are doing down there, it is getting stronger. Vexstar made a decision. He would not be frightened by human stories, no matter how strange they sounded. Prepare the bombardment cannons. Target the largest cities first. If these enhanced humans exist, we will destroy them before they can act. General, wait, Mira said urgently. You do not understand what you are dealing with. I understand. Perfectly, Vexstar snarled. Your species has developed some kind of advanced biotechnology. Impressive, but not enough to stop a full coalition fleet. Red lights began flashing as weapon systems came online. Through the viewing screen, they could see energy building up in the massive cannons that ran along the sides of the alien ships. Please, Myra said, and now there was real fear in her voice. Not fear for herself, but fear for what was about to happen. You are making a terrible mistake. The only mistake was listening to your fairy tales for this long, General Vexstar said. Fire all weapons. Target Sol first. The bridge shook slightly as dozens of energy cannons discharged simultaneously. Brilliant beams of destructive force lanced down toward Earth's surface, each one carrying enough power to level several city blocks. Mira closed her eyes and whispered something in Korean. It sounded like a prayer, but also like a warning. Energy beams struck their targets and simply stopped. They hung motionless in Earth's atmosphere, frozen in midair like someone had pressed a pause button on reality itself. The beams did not explode or dissipate. They just waited, suspended in translucent barriers that shimmered like heat waves. On the bridge of the flagship, every alarm began sounding at once. Sensor readings went wild as computers tried to process something that should have been impossible. General? Vexstar stared at the viewing screen in shock. What is happening? Mira opened her eyes and looked at him with something that might have been pity. I tried to warn you, General. My brother is awake now, and he is very protective of his home. The bridge of General Vexstar's flagship had become chaos. Warning sirens blared from every direction. Officers ran between control stations, their scaled hands flying over buttons and displays. The main viewing screen flickered between different camera angles, all showing the same impossible sight. Their weapons, powerful enough to destroy mountains, hung frozen in the air above Earth like toys someone had forgotten to put away. Sensor report, General Vexstar barked, his voice cutting through the noise. Lieutenant Kex's face was pale with fear. Sir, I am reading massive energy signatures, appearing all over the planet. The power levels are beyond anything in our database. How many signatures? Commander Zelk demanded. Thousands, sir, and they are growing stronger by the minute. General Vexstar turned to stare at Mira. The human girl stood calmly in the middle of the chaos, watching the alien officers panic with sad eyes. She did not look happy about being right. This is impossible, Vexstar growled. No species can generate that much energy without massive technology. You still do not understand, Mira said quietly. They are not generating energy. They are redirecting it. The energy was always there, in the quantum foam that exists everywhere in the universe. Taiho and the others just learned how to use it. Before the general could respond, something impossible happened. A section of empty air near the center of the bridge began to shimmer and bend. Reality twisted like water being stirred. And suddenly, a figure stepped out of nothing. It was a young Korean man in his late 20s. He wore simple black clothes and had dark hair that moved slightly in a breeze that did not exist. His eyes glowed with a soft blue light that made the hardened alien warriors step back in instinctive fear. Hello, sister, Taiho said in Korean, his voice gentle despite the power that radiated from him. Myra's eyes filled with tears. Papa, she whispered, using the Korean word for older brother. The alien officers raised their weapons, but General Vexstar held up a hand to stop them. Something about the way reality bent around this human made him realize that normal weapons would be useless. Taiho looked around the bridge, taking in the alien technology and the frightened faces of the crew. When his glowing eyes met General Vexstar's, the alien commander felt a chill that went deeper than his bones. You are the one who threatened my world, Taiho said in perfect English, His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that made the bridge's metal walls vibrate slightly. "I am General Vexstar of the Galactic Coalition," the alien replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "You will surrender your planet or face the consequences." Taiho smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "I think you misunderstand the situation, General. You are not in a position to make demands." As he spoke, more figures began appearing throughout the bridge. They did not walk through doors or climb through hatches. They simply stepped out of empty air, as if space itself was letting them through. A young Korean woman with short hair appeared near the weapons control station. Her body flickered between solid and transparent, like she could not decide which state she preferred. This was Hannah, Mira's childhood friend, who could walk through walls. Another figure materialized at the same time, in 2 different locations. Guan stood both near the main computer and by the communication array existing in multiple places at once. His presence made the air around him shimmer with possibility. Near the viewing screen, space folded in on itself, and Kyun stepped through. But he did not just appear, the entire section of the bridge seemed to rearrange itself around him. As if he was the center of reality, and everything else had to adjust to his presence. More enhanced humans continued appearing throughout the bridge. Each one carried the same aura of contained power that made the alien technology seem primitive and fragile. "How many of you are there?" General Vexstar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "On this ship, only about 30, Taiho replied casually. "We did not want to overcrowd your bridge." Commander Zelk's voice cracked as he spoke. "Sir, I am getting reports from the entire fleet. Humans are appearing on every ship simultaneously." Through the bridge's communication system, they could hear panicked voices from other vessels. "Bridge to all stations, we have intruders. They just walked through the hall. Our weapons are not working. How are they doing this?" Act on General Vexstar looked at his tactical display. His fleet consisted of over 200 ships, each one carrying hundreds of crew members. The idea that these humans could appear on all of them at the same time was beyond his understanding. "This is impossible," he said again, as if repeating it would make it true. "You keep using that word," Taiho said, walking slowly toward the general. With each step, the air around him seemed to become more solid, more real, while everything else looked pale in comparison. "I do not think it means what you think it means." "What do you want?" Vexstar asked. For the first time in his long military career, he was genuinely afraid. Taiho stopped just a few feet away from the towering alien commander. Despite being much smaller, his presence filled the bridge. "I want you to understand what you have done. You came to my world planning to kill billions of innocent people. You laughed at my sister when she tried to warn you. You thought we were weak because we looked different from you." The young man's eyes blazed brighter, and several control panels around the bridge began to spark and smoke. "But we are not weak, General. We are what happens when a species faces extinction and chooses to evolve instead of surrender." Hannah spoke up from near the weapons station, her voice echoing strangely as it came from both her solid and transparent forms. "We have been preparing for this day for years. We knew that eventually someone would come to Earth with bad intentions." Guan's voice came from both of his bodies at once, creating an eerie harmony. "The governments of Earth worked together to create us, not as weapons of conquest, but as guardians." Kyung moved without seeming to walk, reality shifting to bring him closer to the command chair. "We did not want to become what we are. We gave up normal lives, normal relationships, normal deaths. We became something else, so that humanity could survive." General Vexstar looked around the bridge at the enhanced humans. Each one was young, barely adults by most species standards, but they carried themselves with the confidence of beings who had seen the fundamental structure of reality and learned to reshape it. "What are you going to do to us?" he asked. Taiho looked at his sister, then back at the general. "That depends on you, General. Are you willing to listen now? Or do we need to continue this demonstration?" On the tactical display, more and more, ships were going dark as the enhanced humans took control of them. The greatest invasion fleet in Coalition history was being defeated without a single shot being fired. "How?" Vexstar whispered. "Because," Taiho said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, You forgot the most important rule of warfare. Know your enemy. And you never bothered to learn what humans become when you threaten everything they love. Now, the general's flagship shuddered as its systems began to respond to new commands. Commands given by minds that could interface directly with the quantum foundations of technology itself. General Vexstar realized that his invasion was not just failing, it was becoming something else entirely. And he was no longer in control of what that something would be. The transformation of General Vexstar's fleet happened faster than anyone thought possible. Ship after ship went silent on the communication channels, then came back online under new management. But the enhanced humans were not destroying the vessels. They were doing something far more disturbing. They were converting them. On the main bridge, Taiho walked over to his sister. Up close, Mira could see how much he had changed. His skin seemed to glow faintly from within, and his eyes held depths that hurt to look into for too long. But when he smiled at her, she could still see the brother who had helped her with homework. "I am sorry you had to see this," he said softly in Korean. "We hoped it would never be necessary." "Are you still human?" Mira asked, reaching out to touch his face. Her hand passed through him at first, then became solid when he concentrated. "That is a complicated question," Taiho replied. "We are what humans chose to become when faced with extinction. Whether that still counts as human is something philosophers will have to decide." General Vexstar watched this exchange with growing horror. The casual way the young man shifted between states of matter, the way reality seemed to bend around him, made the alien commander realize he was facing something beyond his experience. "Sir," Lieutenant Kex called out from his station. "I am receiving reports from across the fleet. The humans are not just boarding our ships. They are changing them. Our computers are being rewritten. Our weapons systems are being converted to work with their technology." "What kind of technology?" Commander Zelk demanded. One of the enhanced humans near the communications station answered. Her name was Salman, and she had the ability to interface directly with electronic systems. "Technology based on consciousness instead of circuits," she said. "Your machines are built to follow programmed instructions. Ours respond to directed thought." She placed her hand on a control panel, and immediately the alien symbols on nearby screens began changing to Korean text, then to English, then to languages from dozens of human cultures. "We are not stealing your ships," explained another enhanced human named Dong Yoon. "Could manipulate electromagnetic fields. We are teaching them to work with human minds instead of alien ones." General Vexstar felt his world crumbling around him. "This is not possible. Technology cannot work that way." "Your technology cannot work that way," Taiho corrected gently. "But human consciousness is different from yours, General. We do not just think with our brains. We think with quantum processes that connect us to the fundamental structure of reality." Hannah, still flickering between solid and transparent, moved to stand near the viewing screen. "Show him," she said to Taiho. Taiho nodded and closed his eyes. The air around him began to shimmer, and suddenly the bridge's walls became transparent. They could see through the hull of the ship to the space beyond, where the rest of the fleet hung in formation. But the ships were changing. Their dark metal hulls were becoming lighter, taking on an organic quality that made them look more like living creatures than machines. Energy flowed between the vessels in streams of light, connecting them into a vast network. "What are you doing to them?" Vexstar whispered. "We are showing them how to be alive," Guan said, his dual presence making his words echo strangely. "Your ships are tools, ours are partners." Kyung stepped forward, space bending around him. "The enhanced humans aboard each vessel are teaching the ship's computers to think in new ways. Not just to process information, but to understand it. To make choices based on wisdom instead of programming." The general watched in fascination and terror as his mighty war fleet transformed into something unprecedented. Ships that had been built for conquest were learning to prioritize protection. Weapons designed to destroy planets were being converted into tools for creation and healing. "Why?" he asked. "Why are you doing this?" Taiho opened his eyes and looked directly at the alien commander. "Because we have seen what is coming, General, and your fleet is going to need to be much more than it was if it wants to survive." "What is coming?" Commander Zelk asked. The enhanced humans exchanged glances. There was something in their expressions that made even these young people, who could bend reality with their thoughts, look worried. The expansion of human consciousness did not just change us, Taiho explained. It opened our minds to things that exist beyond normal space and time. We have seen glimpses of the deep universe, General, and there are things out there that make your galactic coalition look like children playing with toys. Mira stepped closer to her brother. What kind of things? Entities that exist in the spaces between dimensions, Hannah said, her transparent form shimmering with unease. Beings that consume reality itself and leave nothing but void behind them. They are moving toward this part of the galaxy, Dong-Yun added. Slowly, but inevitably. Your coalition has maybe 50 years before they arrive. Perhaps 100 if we are lucky, Salman said. Her connection to the ship's sensors giving her access to information that terrified her. General Vextar felt the universe shift around him. Everything he thought he knew about galactic politics, about power, about the nature of threats was being rewritten. How do you know this? He asked. Because expanding human consciousness meant connecting with the quantum information field that underlies all reality, Taiho replied. We can see patterns that normal minds cannot perceive, and the patterns are very clear about what is coming. Kyung moved closer, and the general felt space itself pressing against him. Your coalition has been fighting wars over territory and resources, but that is not what matters. What matters is preparing for the day when reality itself needs to be defended. The enhanced humans you see here are just the beginning, Juan said from both of his positions. Each nation on Earth has been developing their own programs. There are thousands of us now, all connected, all working toward the same goal. Which is? Baxter asked, though he was beginning to understand. Evolution, Taiho said simply.
Oh.
Not just for humans, but for any species willing to take the next step. Your people, General, have the potential to become something more than they are. But first, you have to stop thinking like conquerors and start thinking like guardians. The viewing screen showed the transformation of the fleet was nearly complete. What had been an invasion force was becoming something entirely new. Ships that could think for themselves, weapons that chose their targets based on moral considerations rather than military orders. Technology that responded to consciousness as much as to commands. What do you want from us? General Vextar asked. I want you to go back to the coalition, Mira said, speaking for the first time in several minutes. Tell them what you have seen here. Tell them that Earth is not a conquest to be claimed, but an ally they need. Tell them that the age of expansion through conquest is ending, Taiho added. The new age will be about expansion through evolution, and those who refuse to evolve will not survive what is coming. General Vextar looked around his bridge. His crew, his ship, his entire fleet had been transformed in a matter of hours. But for the first time since arriving at Earth, he was beginning to think that might not be a bad thing. And if the coalition refuses to listen? He asked. Taiho's eyes blazed brighter for a moment, and every piece of technology on the bridge hummed with responsive energy. Then they will discover that humans are very good at protecting the things they care about, he said, even if it means becoming monsters to do it. The general realized that the young man in front of him was not making a threat. He was making a promise. And General Vextar was beginning to understand that promises from beings who could rewrite reality were the most dangerous things in the universe. 3 hours after the transformation began, General Vextar found himself a passenger on his own flagship. The ship still looked like his command vessel from the outside, but everything else had changed. The walls hummed with new energy. The computers responded to thoughts as much as to touch, and the very air seemed more alive. He sat in what had been his command chair, but was no longer his to command. The enhanced humans had not locked him away or executed him. Instead, they had done something far more unsettling. They had made him irrelevant. The bridge operated with perfect efficiency, under the guidance of minds that could process information. At quantum speeds, orders flowed between ships not through radio communications, but through direct consciousness-to-consciousness contact. The fleet moved with a coordination that no military force in coalition history had ever achieved. Taiho stood near the main viewing screen, watching Earth grow larger as they descended toward the planet's surface. His sister Mira stood beside him, still trying to understand what her brother had become. "Will you stay on Earth now?" she asked him quietly. "For a while," Taiho replied, "but not forever. We have work to do in other parts of the galaxy." "Kind of work finding others like us? Species that are ready to take the next step in evolution? Teaching them what we have learned, preparing everyone for what is coming." General Vexstar cleared his throat. "What will happen to my crew? To the Coalition?" Taiho turned to look at the alien commander. The glow in his eyes had dimmed somewhat, making him appear more human, but the power was still there just beneath. "The surface. Your crew will be given a choice," he said. "They can return to Coalition space with reports of what happened here, or they can stay and learn what we have to teach. And the Coalition itself? It depends on how they respond to." "Your reports," Hannah said, her form solidifying as she concentrated. "If they choose to see us as an opportunity for alliance, we will work with them. If they see us as a threat to be eliminated." She did not finish the sentence, but she did not need to. Everyone on the bridge understood what would happen to any force that tried to attack Earth now. Commander Zelk, who had been silent for most of the past hour, finally spoke up. "How many worlds will you change like this?" "As many as are willing," Juan replied from his position near the communications array. His dual presence allowed him to monitor conversations happening across the entire fleet simultaneously. "But we will not force evolution on anyone. That choice must be made freely." "What about species that refuse?" Zelk asked. Kyung moved closer, and the commander felt reality shift around him. "They will be protected from the entities that are coming, if possible, but they will remain what they are now, limited to single planets, single dimensions, single states of consciousness." "While those who evolve will become something more?" General Vexstar asked. "Something unlimited," Taiho confirmed, "able to exist across multiple dimensions. To travel between stars as easily as walking between rooms, to reshape reality according to their will and wisdom." The main viewing screen showed Earth's surface approaching. But it was not the same planet that General Vexstar had seen when he first arrived. Energy streams flowed between continents like glowing rivers. The lights of cities pulsed and synchronized. Patterns that suggested a level of global coordination never before achieved by any species. "Your world has changed too," he observed. "Earth is awakening," Mira said with pride in her voice. "Not just the enhanced humans, but everyone. The quantum field connections we have learned to use are teaching normal humans to think in new ways, to cooperate instead of compete, to build instead of destroy." "It is happening faster than we expected," Salman added from her position at the sensor station. "Human consciousness appears to be more adaptable than most species. Once the barriers are broken down, the changes spread naturally." They landed at a facility outside Seoul that had not existed when the invasion fleet first arrived. The building seemed to grow from the landscape itself, its organic curves and flowing lines making it look more like a living thing than a structure made by engineers. As they disembarked from the ship, General Vexstar saw hundreds of other vessels scattered across the landing field. Some were clearly of human origin, with the same organic design as the building. Others were obviously alien, but they had been modified with the same technology that had transformed his fleet. "Ships from other worlds?" he asked. "Representatives from species that detected the energy signatures when we activated our abilities?" Dong-Yun explained. Most came expecting to find a new threat to be contained. Instead, they found teachers willing to share knowledge. Walking across the landing field, Vexstar could see beings from dozens of different worlds working alongside humans. But there was something different about all of them. They moved with the same enhanced awareness he had observed in Taiho and the other modified humans. They chose evolution too, he realized. "Some did," Taiho said. "Others are still deciding. Evolution is not something that can be rushed, General. Each species must find their own path to expanded consciousness." They entered the building through walls that recognized their approach and opened like flowers blooming. Inside, the general saw the most diverse gathering of intelligent species he had ever witnessed. But unlike the political meetings he was used to, there was no tension here, no competition for dominance. Instead, There was something that looked like collaboration on a scale he had never imagined possible. "What are you all working on?" he asked. "Preparing for the deep ones," Hannah replied, using the term the enhanced humans had coined for the entities approaching from beyond normal space, creating technologies and strategies that can function across multiple dimensions. It's building networks of consciousness that can respond to threats faster than light-speed communication. "Building weapons?" Commander Zelk asked. "It's building everything," Kuhn corrected. "Weapons, yes, but also tools for creation, healing, exploration, communication across species barriers. When consciousness becomes the foundation of technology, the distinction between different types of tools becomes less important." General Vextar was led to a chamber where representatives from the Galactic Coalition were already meeting with Earth's leaders. But the humans in charge were not politicians or military officers. They were enhanced individuals whose expanded consciousness allowed them to understand complex galactic politics in ways that normal minds could not process. "General Vextar," said one of them, a middle-aged Korean woman whose eyes held the same. "Quantum depth is Taiho's. We have been expecting you." "You have?" "We have been monitoring coalition communications since your fleet arrived," she explained. "We know that some members of your government are already calling for a larger invasion force. Others are suggesting alliance. We hope your report will help them choose wisely." Over the following days, General Vextar learned more about the transformed Earth than he had discovered in decades of military intelligence. The planet had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a world where an entire species was consciously evolving beyond their original biological limits. But more than that, it had become a center for teaching other species to do the same thing. "Why share this knowledge?" he asked Taiho during one of their conversations. "You could use it to conquer the galaxy yourselves." Taiho looked up at the stars visible through the building's transparent ceiling. "'Cause conquest is a dead end. General, it creates empires that eventually collapse under their own weight. But evolution creates something that can grow forever." And because Mira added, joining their conversation, "The things that are coming will not be stopped by any single species, no matter how powerful. They will only be stopped by consciousness itself, working together across every possible barrier." When General Vextar finally prepared to leave Earth, his ship had been transformed into something that was part vessel, part living being, and part extension of enhanced human consciousness. His crew, given the choice between returning unchanged or learning new ways of thinking, had split almost evenly. Those who stayed would spend years learning to expand their own consciousness. Those who returned would carry reports that would forever change how the Coalition saw the small blue world at the edge of their territory as his ship lifted off from Earth's surface. General Vextar looked back at the planet one final time. It glowed now with energies that had not existed a week before. The transformation was spreading, not just to other worlds, but to the very structure of space around Earth. "What will you tell the Coalition?" Commander Zelk asked from his position. At the navigation station, General Vextar thought for a long moment before answering. "I will tell them the truth. That we came here to conquer a primitive world and instead discovered the future of all intelligent life in the galaxy." He paused, watching the energy streams that now connected Earth to other star systems like glowing threads in a vast web. "And I will tell them that we have a choice to make. We can be part of that future, or we can be left behind by it. But we cannot stop it." As Earth disappeared behind them, General Vextar began composing his report. It would be the most important document in Coalition history, and he knew that how his government responded to it would determine whether his species survived the changes that were coming to the galaxy. Behind them, on the small blue world they were leaving, enhanced humans looked up at the stars and began planning humanity's next steps into a universe that was about to become far more interesting than anyone had ever imagined.